Welcome back to the Messy Reformation. My name's Jason Rice, and I'm the Associate Pastor at Bethel CRC and Chaplain at Central Wisconsin Christian in Waupun, Wisconsin. My co-host is Willie Cronky. He's a member at Pease CRC in Pease, Minnesota. We're just a couple of guys who love the Christian Reformed Church and want to see Reformation happen in our denomination. But we realize that whenever Reformation happens in the history of the church, things get messy. And after the last couple of synods, and as we move into this rebuilding phase of the Reformation, things continue to be messy in the Christian Reformed Church. So we're taking the opportunity to have conversations with pastors and leaders throughout the Christian Reformed Church to find out what's going on in our denomination, but also to talk about what Reformation and rebuilding might look like. If you haven't already, take a moment to click subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming content. We're dropping episodes every single Sunday evening. It's also important for you to know that you are our marketing plan. We rely on you to spread the word about what we're doing at the Messy Reformation. We rely on you to share our content, and we also rely on you to give us 5-star reviews and provide good feedback for this podcast. You can also support us financially on Patreon or Substack. All the money raised is used to build the platform of the Messy Reformation. With all that said, we're going to get to this week's episode, which is part 2 of our STM Roundtable with Harv Roosma and Roger Sparks.
There are challenges involved, and yet for us it's been just very good. It's been just a wonderful thing, and we treasure very much the moments of ministry and fellowship and friendship that we've had with churches along the way.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'd be curious and, answer honestly, I would say. But I've interacted with numerous churches over the years who have said, we're ready to change. We're ready to have some hard conversations. And you're like, oh, that's good. And then you come into the situation and you find out they were not as ready as they thought they were to have some of those kind of hard conversations. And so do you seem like you kind of get some of that feel when you step in as well? Or has it been pretty open and ready to have some of those tough conversations from the get-go?
Not sure who we have starting here, but I can jump in and say, yeah, that dynamic is one that you certainly see in life in general. And there have been times where there has been that, we're ready to talk, but we didn't know if we want to talk about that, or there can be some. I guess generally I found that if especially after you develop some trust, I mean, I wouldn't come there on the second day and ask the hardest question. You may want to kind of get to know people a bit and develop some trust. But I found with a little persistence, people are willing to have those conversations. There can be some resistance to that, but my experience is that churches have been pretty okay. I mean, they may not, maybe you have an assessment and they say, well, we see it differently, and so it may not always full agreement, but certainly good, polite, respectful conversation that I have experienced.
Yeah, I think human nature, even forgiven and progressively being sanctified human nature, plays into all this. And I just think people are willing to talk as long as they have a sense that you're going to agree with them, and and so when lines are drawn, like I said, we don't come in with a magic wand to fix everything. But one of our goals is that if, at least as I see it, if people disagree, I want them to understand why they disagree and why the other person sees things their way. And that's much easier said than done. But that's one of the challenges, of course. And really one of the goals, I think, is for people to really understand, well, why was the other person so upset with us? Well, okay, at least now I understand why. Boy, that goes a long ways. And especially if you discover that some people within a church don't trust each other. That's a huge chasm to try to bridge. And sometimes you get across it, sometimes you don't, to be honest. But it's a wonderful thing when you see people really understanding and ready to work with each other. In fact, that's one of those. I mean, every profession probably has where it's like, oh, I sort of live for these moments, and that would be one of those types of things. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious. And obviously confidentiality and all of that applies, and not expecting you to talk shop too much. But maybe speak vaguely. Just what are some of the common issues, in particular, if you're stepping into a troubled church, but even if you're like, I'm stepping into a healthy church, but I see these issues kind of pop up over and over again. Like, what are some of the things that you're having to deal with on a regular basis as you serve as an STM? Roger, you can go first, and then Harv.
All right. I think a common theme is churches understand that they need to improve communication. Like, that's like a big deal, communication. And it sounds really easy. Well, just talk to each other more or whatever. But it is an issue that I've seen coming up. And again, it's not, a horrible thing, but it's just something that needs to be fine-tuned. I think as well that with communication and real understanding, like I was kind of getting at a minute ago, for people to understand each other instead of sort of holding each other at arm's length because they sense some disagreement. And that's where communication comes in too. So that's I would say a common theme. Harv's been at this longer than me. What do you see, Harv?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that show on the surface. I mean, some churches attendance may be declining significantly. I mean, and so our attendance is way down, and so that's a struggle that we have. How do we continue? What's going on with that? There can be, and this is not necessarily always the case, but there might be conflict with the pastor. I mean, recently, gender things can be, a struggle in church. Leadership from council. I mean, council people, I love them. They're wonderful people, and usually many of them are still working, and so they're giving up time that is precious to them, and so I appreciate that. But there can be they're put in a difficult position, and sometimes leadership from council can they need more training, or there can be struggles with that. Sometimes there are issues in a church that people are just kind of aware of but don't want to deal with because it's just too uncomfortable to deal with it. And eventually people just, people stop coming because of that. So there can be just issues that have not been dealt with. I think ambiguity of vision, just not kind of don't have that clarified, sharp sense of who we are and what God has called us to be as this particular church. So that can be an issue. Yeah, I don't know. It can be quite a variety, and I think it really takes some perception and listening to take that in. But that's an example of some of the things that can show up. I will agree with Roger that communication is just a huge thing, or sometimes lack of communication. That's really a big thing.
Yeah, I mean, underneath most of what the things you listed, I think communication could fall under that, right? Lack of ambiguity of vision is usually a communication issue. Over the years, interacting with I'm as a stated clerk, I'm interacting with a number of churches and conflict and stuff. And a lot of times it comes down to even the difficulties with council leadership come down to, well, councils don't always communicate very well and how they communicate things. And so, yeah, communication does end up being an underlying one. And I think what Roger was talking about earlier that didn't officially come up in this one, but I think is huge, I want to kind of poke at it a little bit, is trust. When you don't trust each other, it feels like things can really devolve from that point on. And so what would you say? We'll go Roger and then Harv again, if you want to add on to that, Harv. But what are some of the things you do in a church to try to work through some of those trust issues?
That's a good question. I don't know if my mind can get around that in the abstract of a discussion like this. But I just think too that if people are worried that the people they don't trust are, going off the deep end in terms of loving and wanting to follow the scriptures, I mean, you have to just remind each other, and hopefully they are wanting to be loyal to the Bible, that some of their fears may be unfounded. And again, that's right back to communication. Talk to each other instead of about each other. Talk to each other. And so anybody listening into our discussion, make sure you're talking to one another in the church and not just about each other. And then pray. If you can get people to pray together too, and that's a wonderful thing. And then you remind them to pray for each other, not just about each other. To me, that's maybe sounds like a subtle difference, but it's very significant to pray for each other and not just about each other. So again, you can't control what people think about each other. You have no idea when you step into the situation how littered their relationship is with past conflicts, maybe family disagreement, and you just don't know. But you try to encourage, real fellowship around the word, the fellowship we have in Christ, and pray that that's blessed.
My question for both of you, we've talked about some of the struggles. We've talked about some of the things when you first get into STM. What are some of the joys? What are some of the rewarding aspects that you've experienced, both of you, doing STM ministry?
Well, I can start with that, and there are plenty. Roger talked about earlier that there's this saying goodbye or saying hello and greeting people, and there's the other end of that where you have to say goodbye quite quickly. But the getting to know people, getting to know areas, getting to know different cultures, that's just really been a joy. And I think there is a certain kind of joy. I mean, when you walk with people through hard things and you really talk about things, and we talked about developing trust and helping people to talk honestly. So, okay, let's take this conversation to a deeper level, like what's really going on here, and really bring it down to that sort of thing. When you talk about forgiveness, I mean, one of the topics that I've found the most struggle with when I come into a church is you preach a sermon and really talk about forgiveness, and there can really be a pushback to that. Really, do I have to forgive? But when you work through that, there is just incredible joy in that, and you're just bringing things to a deeper level. And Now that can happen in a settled pastorate as well. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but what I've experienced in STM is that's been profound.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And when you come in, and you just let people know that you're there to listen, and if they've had troubles and trials and so forth, you're there to hear whatever's on their hearts. And some people just really unburden themselves, and you think to yourself as an STM, what did I get myself into? Sometimes, but at the same time, I always think it's just such an honor for someone to share their troubles and trials and their joys too. And so even if it's a hard conversation and there are tears involved, for me, that's a joy just to be part of allowing someone to share their hurts. And again, that doesn't fix everything, but for some people, I think that is a step toward growing beyond things that have happened. So that's been part of it. I've discovered too, it's just amazing that you can walk into a church where you don't know anybody. Although in the CRC, when people play, what do they call that? Bingo? Do you know so-and-so?
Bingo.
You find out you have mutual acquaintances, even if you don't know anybody. But you come as strangers, and through the miracle of the gospel and fellowship, you leave as friends. It's like, that's awesome. And when you're leaving and there's this sense of, oh, I wish I didn't have to leave these lovely new people that we've just connected with, then you look forward to the next experience of, you come as strangers, but in the amazing grace of God, you can leave as friends. So that's a great joy. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
One of you mentioned human nature before. Human nature just plays into what you find, and so there's not like a specific problem that's always going to be the same. You both served long term in the traditional pastorate. What would you recommend to those of us who are pastoring right now? What can we learn? What can we try to implement to help our churches avoid the need for an STM, at least like in a troubling situation? If it's a longer term pastorate, obviously you can't detour everything, but yeah, what would you recommend? I mean, these are the things that we don't learn in seminary that we don't expect to come up.
I'll just real quick, I'll respond to that, then let Harvey have a crack at it. But I would say, be honest and communicate. Talk to people. If you sense a disagreement, don't just send somebody to talk to them. Go talk to them yourself. I mean, that's just really important. And it's like, duh. Why don't we all think of that and do it? But it can be awkward. But I would say overcome the awkwardness and pray that it's blessed and so forth. So that's one thing. Just talk to people. Another thing is don't give people a stick to hit you with. You know what I mean? If you say something, follow through. Be consistent. That's important in ministry. And I would say love the Bible and love people. Because if you're loving the scriptures and you love sharing it with people, they're going to know, they're going to sense that. And, the Holy Spirit has to help you in both of those things. So just look to the Spirit of God also to help you in that. So that's, it's, things get complicated, and I've been down that road too. Things get tense and so forth. But I think those are just some very basic things to keep in mind. humility more than being flashy. I mean, there's just so many basic things that you can do to keep the pastoral relationship alive where you are, so it doesn't get strangled, so to speak, as time goes by. What do you think, Harvey?
Yeah, I would agree with that. So echo it. I think that to continue clarifying vision, to keep that sharp, to make sure that there is a gospel focus. I mean, focusing on the redemption, the beauty of the work of Christ. And I mean, I know pastors do that, but just to say that, talking about leadership, training for leadership, addressing issues. I mean, if things need to be addressed, again, back to that communication thing. Accountability for everybody. Again, Roger, you said humility. I think that's huge. And just loving people, praying together, but really that people know that as a pastor, you're amongst it all. We're there because we love these people and want to help this to be a community that's really following God's will for us and trusting in His love, that we glorifying God and enjoying Him together and forever. So just really focusing on that.
Yeah, amen. We Roger touched on it, but let's dive a little deeper into. We talked about communication, how that was kind of a big one that led to some problems. And so, what advice, besides not downplaying the advice of, if you have a problem with somebody, go talk to them? That one, I learned that one the hard way running my business as a young 21-year-old guy. I would have a customer call me really angry, and I would ignore the call because I didn't want to deal with them. And then I would ignore the next call. And then because I wouldn't want to deal with them. And then I realized it would just get worse and worse and worse the longer you waited. But beyond that, what are some things that you would encourage pastors and maybe even, let's say, elders and deacons, council members, on how to work, how to communicate well with their people?
Yeah, I think people don't want to. I mean, council meetings, for example, technically they're open. Anybody could attend unless there's an executive session thing going on. But, people don't want to just come sit in on the council meetings to listen in that sense. But I just think councils need to share highlights of their meetings. You don't share everything, obviously, but I think that's important on a regular basis. And even just being open, people need to know that if they have questions, the council wants them to ask so they can explain things. The size of a congregation makes a huge difference in this. If your whole group is like 30, that makes a difference, or 300. I mean, that's a huge difference in number. And what I discovered is it's pretty self-evident too. You really have to work at it, the bigger the group, to really communicate effectively, and even to encourage fellowship, so you're not just a face in a crowd, So I think there needs to be a transparency. We talk about that with politicians too. We want our leaders to be transparent and not be hiding things. And I think if people know that, and that the council actually loves them, there's that aspect too, then it's going to go well.
Mm-hmm. I'll let Harv speak. I just want to put a pin in something you just said, because I've served on enough boards and councils where it has gone south very quickly when they've started having conversations about what should we share and what shouldn't we share, right? And they start trying to control the narrative, and then the congregation or the organization quickly feels like you're not being transparent. you're hiding something from us. And then that even connects directly to what we talked about earlier. If the congregation feels like the council's hiding information from them, then they lose trust. And trust is really hard to get back. And so I just wanted to highlight that because I've seen that go south multiple times, where just being open, honest, transparent goes a long way. Harv, what would you say?
In terms of good communication, I think part of that is, and again, you can't do this with everyone all the time in a large congregation because you're limited to how many people you can get to. But I think encouraging in the congregation that we are actually listening to people. And that may sound very simple, but it just seems to me in our culture that listening is not something that we do very well. People are, when conversations are happening, it seems that there's more interest in what I want to say than to carefully listening to what someone else is saying. And so really develop that art of just the simple listening. One of the things in STM, in some of the different programs, is that we do listening groups. Now, I don't know, I don't know that I did that a lot in a long-term setting, but one certainly could, like, just have certain questions, and we want to listen to the congregation. So you can sign up for a listening group, and we'll just ask questions and hear what you have to say about such and such a topic in a group. So it's kind of a formalized ability to listen. And I think also you can direct perhaps the conversation as well. Because sometimes there can be a sense that if people are unhappy about something, it can become accusational. And maybe there's a need for that, but there also can be an invitation to say, okay, I understand the struggle, but can you think of ways to fix this? I mean, turn it more toward possible solution thinking rather than accusational thinking, and to kind of direct the conversation that way.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Well, good. We are coming right up to the end here of our podcast, and we usually give our guests just an opportunity to say some final words to our listeners, and so we'll give each of you an opportunity to do that, and you can kind of start thinking about maybe what you want to leave them with. I always like to remind people we have a wider variety in our audience than we expected. We've got anyone from long-term pastors to elders, deacons, high schoolers, even a couple of middle schoolers I know that tune in and listen. So we've got this broad range of listeners who listen. What would be some final words you would want to leave them with? And I'll let Roger go first, and then Harv, you can wrap us up.
Well, I would just say in terms of having an STM come in and help a congregation, we tried to emphasize this earlier. I'll come back to it once more. Don't think of it as a stigma. Don't think of it as a black mark against you. Look at it as a way that God is providing for some stability, hopefully, and leadership in a time of transition in the life of a church. So the resources are there, and we just want to be a blessing to the churches that we help out in.
Okay. And I can follow up on that, and I would just say that again, that I think an STM, I think that when churches have that, they see that as a positive experience, and it is a good thing, it's a healthy thing, and can be a really, really joyful time. And I think in general, too, that we've got, I mean, every church, I mean, we're humans, and so we're going to have struggles. But we have so much to celebrate. To celebrate good things in our denomination, the gospel story that we can share. I think just to focus on that celebration, and to keep praying for a clarified both church and denominational vision. Where's God taking us? I think God is doing great things, and we get to be part of that story, and that's a privilege. And so just celebrate that together.
Yeah, amen. And I'll just throw in a little word at the end here. We didn't get to it in our conversation, but I just want to, if there's anybody listening here who may feel like God's kind of tugging them in the direction of becoming a transitional minister, if you feel like maybe God has gifted you to that and that you could bless and serve the church in that way, I would encourage you to, I'll encourage you to reach out to Roger or Harvey. I know they would love to chat with you. Or just reach out to Pastor Church Relations as well, who does oversee that. And begin maybe feeling out that process, because both Harv and Roger have done some really good work. I've been able to kind of watch their transitional ministry up close and experience the fruit of that. And it can be a real blessing to the church if you're called to that. So yeah, I just want to give you a nudge. If God's nudging you as well, reach out and be a blessing to the church in that way. That's all we have for this week. If you want to help us out and support the Messy Reformation, another thing you can do is sign up for our newsletter through Substack. That way you'll get episodes and summaries sent directly into your email inbox. It also gives us the ability to communicate with our audience, which is one of the biggest struggles of a podcast. So head over to the Messy Reformation on Substack and sign up for our newsletter. But until then, don't forget this is Christ's church, and he bought it with his blood. And we've been warned that wolves will come in trying to destroy the flock. So keep a close watch on your life and on your doctrine. Preach the word in season and out of season, and keep fighting the good fight in this messy Reformation.